WNST, Towson, Baltimore, all up in Lambeau Field and headed up to Green Bay. And certainly we waited all week to have this guy on. He's watching film and writing about things as he's been doing for almost 4 decades now. 39 years on the beat up there in the land of cheese and brats and beer. I love it so well. I'll be enjoying all of that on Sunday at Lambeau Field. He's the co-owner of Bob McGinn Football.com along with his son. He's been covering the Packers a long, long time, and you can find him out on Twitter at Bob McGinn as well. That's McGinn. Bob, always a pleasure to have you on, and always a pleasure to get back up there to Lambeau. We only go every 8 years, and every 8 years I go up there, and it's like a whole new city built onto itself. For a guy who's been around it a lot longer than me, it must sort of change daily for you, right?
Well, with the turning of the leaves, I guess, I live about a mile from Lambeau Field.
Wow.
33 and gray right now as I speak to you.
Not shocking. Well, this game comes out on the schedule in April, and we say, oh, boy, we're going to have cold weather. We're going to have Aaron Rodgers week before Thanksgiving. This is a tough spot for the Ravens, and then you lose a quarterback, and it really changes everything. And this is something, over the last 2 decades or so, you haven't had to write much about backup quarterbacks, especially during the era of Brett Favre. This is a unique opportunity, as I like to say, for the Ravens to go up there and steal a game this weekend.
Nestor, I started on the beat full-time in 84, and from 84 to 91, every other story I wrote was about a QB, trying to, get one to the next Bart Starr. And then when Wolf made that trade for Brett Favre in February of 92, I've never written about the quarterback since, so it's been a crazy situation. But yes, you're right. It's amazing. The Ravens are favored by 2 points at Lambeau Field. That almost never has happened here over the years when visiting teams are favored, But they are, and they got a real chance to win this game.
Yeah, I think if you would have told me back in August we'd be a 2-point favorite by the time we got there, I'd say I can't think that's because we're going to be supernatural as a football team here. We've had all sorts of problems, and a lot of them have really been rooted in injury. Some underperformance, especially on the offensive side, but I don't know that the offense has ever had his sea legs under it after they've lost Marshall Yanda. And I know when you lose your quarterback, especially when the whole thing's designed for Aaron Rodgers, this is a unique challenge for everyone there to try to turn the boat. You got a bunch of drafted running backs there you'd like to see, but the team was really built around the wide receivers and around the quarterback and the O-line.
That's true, Nestor. It is, and they've been to the playoffs 8 straight years. However, they drafted this Brett Hundley in the 5th round 3 years ago, and he has had the advantage of being in all these quarterback schools. He's had McCarthy. That's how he made his reputation, coaching QBs. Alex Van Pelt and Tom Clements for 2 years before that. This is their guy, and this is their system, and he's learned at the foot of Rodgers, and they've got to make it happen. A lot of coaches have won with backup quarterbacks, and now they have to do it. If you count as a quarterback of record, Hundley's 1-3, and that's not good enough.
Bob McGinn joining us here. All of our programming here brought to you by our friends at Deli-ish, Merritt Boulevard. Make that left turn. If you're coming down North Point, make that right turn. Get on to Wise Avenue and get over and see our friends at Deli-ish. New York-style Rubens, they cater in as well, but they got that lean corned beef you need for the holidays. Visit them at delibaltimore.com. Also, our friends at Compass Point Golf Course in Pasadena, the best place to play this fall and winter. Events, friendly folks, they got the craft beers there, and, of course, the turkey shoot next Friday. Find them at compasspointgolf.com. Bob McGinn has been covering the Packers for 40 years. We're coming up to Lambeau this weekend, and I would say the offense is one thing, the backup quarterback situation where Brett Hundley is, but defensively, Bob, that's really been the challenge here for Ted Thompson and for Mike McCarthy to find a Super Bowl caliber defense. I'm not sure they've climbed that mountain yet.
No, they certainly haven't. They played pretty well against the Bears, but everybody plays pretty good against them. They have no weapons outside. They got a bunch of players who haven't played well this year who should be playing better. Clinton Dix, the safety, went to the Pro Bowl last year. He's made a lot of mental mistakes, some blown coverages. He hasn't tackled great. He's been a real disappointment. Clay Matthews has not played. He hasn't produced, and his pressure numbers are down, too. He's 30 or 31, and some people are questioning whether his legs are still there and whether he can beat people around the corner. Nick Perry, until this last game, has been kind of average. and Mike Daniels has been kind of average, and nobody at cornerback has really distinguished themselves. So I guess the one young player who has played beyond expectations, two of them, nose tackle Kenny Clark, a second-year player, and inside backer Blake Martinez, another second-year player. But under Dom Capers, they're a pretty ordinary defense right now.
Well, and I guess offensively, they kind of want to get the ball to Adams, right? That's the thing that has sort of clicked here during the Hundley era. I don't know what that means for Cobb and certainly for Jordy Nelson in possession, but revamping the offense and making it do things that only Aaron Rodgers could do and now can't anymore. The kid did make a couple of passes against the Bears late in the game, and I think for that, when you view the film from the Ravens' perspective defensively, they need to stay honest because you do have talented receivers there who've done some special things.
You're definitely right. Adams is clearly their number one now. Nelson, he's just lost a lot. He can't separate deep, really. And Randall Cobb got run down by Nick Kwiatkowski, the inside backer. He got ran down in the open field last week. Kind of shocking. And they don't have Martellus Bennett at tight end. So, Lester, what this is going to come down to, it's going to be blood and guts football. And they have a backup running back now who played last week, Jamal Williams, a rookie from BYU. Lester, in terms of running hard and physical, I've hardly ever seen anything like this in Green Bay, what he did in the second half. By my count of his 67 yards, 57 came after contact. He broke 8 tackles, 3 by that beast at defensive end, Akeem Hicks, and 2 by the other end, Mitch Unrein. So, Williams, I'm telling you, I know, Baltimore, they've been susceptible to the run statistically, but I look at their 3 huge guys up front, and they shouldn't be. But that's what this is going to be. They have to establish Jamal Williams and then throw off play action.
You can find Bob McGinn out at BobMcGinnFootball.com as well as at Bob McGinn on Twitter. Just a mile away from Lambeau Field. Tell our fans what your eyes have seen there in the transformation. I mean, Bob, I go back with John Stedman and, the Evening Sun and the News American back in the 80s and the background. And I think for everyone in Baltimore, whoever was on 33rd Street, and I'm assuming at some point you visited, you probably were at that crazy tie game back in 1981 with Chester Marcole and Lynn Dickey, amongst others, James Lofton and all that stuff. But I think there's a vision that what if we could have kept Memorial Stadium and built around it and made it beautiful. And that's ridiculous. But in Green Bay, they did that. In Fenway Park, Wrigley Field, some other places, they've done that. But Lambeau had the one thing a lot of those places didn't have, which was literally available land where Foxborough is built out in the middle of a pasture where there's a mall now. But they couldn't really do that at Fenway. They can't really do that at Wrigley, although the bars are all around there. Lambeau's that one area that has grown up, and I literally don't think I'm going to recognize it when I get there, Bob.
Yeah, they spent $295 million in a renovation of Lambeau and seat expansion, and then they've added probably $60 million since then with an expansion of the south end. So, they've just pushed out from their parking lot. I mean, it is in Green Bay itself, right in the city, and so there's much less parking on site, but there's all kinds of lots around there, and so that people don't park too far away. You still get that historic feel. There's no question. The bench-type seating is there for about 65,000 of the 80,000 seats. It hasn't been real loud, Nestor. And the other thing, the fans aren't as passionate here right now as they have been. They've won so much for a generation, and it's more of a place where it's a bucket list place, where fat cats fly in or will spend any amount of money on StubHub for tickets. This is a place we have to see before we, leave Earth. And it's not like it was here, certainly in the 60s when they turned it around from being in the pits of the NFL, or in the 90s under Favre and Wolf and Holmgren when they also had been in the pits for 20 years. And at that point, it was kind of a small 59,000-seat stadium, and the place was rocking, man, and with these fans that were just, so jacked by winning again.
Well, the Lambeau Leap, that was really sort of the birth of that. And, hey, Bob, the first time I was out there was the championship game against Carolina in 95, 96, and it was 2 degrees, and I love to tell people the story that we left the game in the early part of the fourth quarter. We were frozen, right? I mean, and we weren't Packer fans. And as much as seeing the celebration, it wasn't. I mean, we were what you're talking about. We flew to Chicago. We rented a cheap car. The heat broke down. It was 2 degrees. We stopped at some parcel outlet place and bought like stuff that was weather appropriate. We literally flew in and said, we're going to buy the stuff we're going to wear to the game in Wisconsin because it was going to be that cold. 3 feet of snow on the ground. You were there that day. I mean, you remember. But we left in the fourth quarter, and that mile down, what's it, Oneida Street, on the way to 43, we were headed down to Milwaukee to go to a Bucks game that night and get an early morning flight home out of Chicago. And when we made the turn out of Lambeau Field, I'll never forget, there was nothing moving. There was no living creature, no moving cars, no one. We literally did not see a human being because either you were in a bar, in a house, in a home, or you were in the stadium, but it was so cold out, and it was the greatest day in Green Bay history. You were going back to the Super Bowl for the first time in that generation, and it was like a bomb went off. It was like everyone, it wasn't 99% into the Packers. It was literally 100% some pets and animals and living creatures in that area. I think bears and moose and deer were watching the game. But, and it's hard to maintain that. You know what I mean? It's hard to have that first time again. Bob, if this game were here in Baltimore, you'd see empty seats because the fans are pissed about the knee, the weather's bad, the team's 4-5. It is very, very hard to keep that crescendo of winning, and even in New England where all they do is win, I almost say they get bored with it up there. And that's, there's nothing like the first time, but it's really hard to maintain that through years and years and years and games and games and games.
Well said, and they're experiencing it here. Bob Harlem, the retired president here, he always says that his favorite game, Nestor, was that Carolina game you were at.
Wow.
Because that sent him to the Super Bowl. 2 weeks later after they won the Super Bowl, they had a bus trip through downtown Green Bay and the suburbs. I think it lasted 3 hours in like 8-degree weather.
Well, I mean, there's nothing like a victory parade to take the chill off the air in a hot toddy. He is Bob McGinn. He is the co-owner of BobMcGinnFootball.com. You can find him out on Twitter. Everything we do here brought to you by our friends at Fremont Mortgage. Don't make a 30-year mistake by choosing the wrong lender. You need Fremont.com. Big thanks to Carl Delmont and the crew from Fremont for sponsoring all of our live shows and our swabbings. We were Costas on Tuesday night with C.J. Mosley. You can hear that out in the BuyAToyota.com audio vault as well. Bob, tell everybody about your 40 years of doing this and what you do now. A lot of times my wife runs sound for me after the games, and I make it a family affair. My son covered a couple of training camps during the Billick era up in Westminster many moons ago, but I know you've made your love of football and your love of the Green Bay Packers, your community, and all that the Packers represent. It's your life's work, but your son's involved now, right?
Right. I retired out in May from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel after all these years on the beat, both for the Journal-Sentinel and for the Green Bay Press-Gazette prior to that. And I was just ready to walk away. And 65 years old, I'd done enough. And my son, who's in business in Milwaukee, he's 29, Charlie McGinn, he said, Bob, you can't let the draft series end, Dad. I hit that hard in March and April, And we talked, and I was going to golf 3 or 4 times a week. Not well, but I love the game. Well, I'm at a Planet Fitness, and I mess up my rotator cuff, Nestor, and I haven't swung a club this entire season.
Well, and Planet Fitness is one of our great sponsors doing our morning newspaper. So it all. And by the way, I must tell you that the reason I'm a journalist, crazily enough, is when I was 10 years old, I loved Happy Days, and Richie Cunningham worked at the Milwaukee Journal, right? so you followed the path of Richie Cunningham for me, which makes the story even more delicious. But it's a fascinating thing how much the league has grown, and I think I won't see it as much until I see whatever becomes in L.A. of that project in Inglewood. You go down to Jerry's World. Now we have a new stadium in Atlanta. They're still playing games out at the Coliseum and at this bandbox out in L.A. But the Lambeau Field thing, we go every 8 years, and I think of you saying, you've literally watched that thing come up from the sky in your neighborhood, and I think you've watched that franchise go from, as you pointed out, not very good, sort of broken down after the Bart Starr era, and when there was if this were Major League Baseball and there were no socialism, the Packers might have left, right? I mean, like literally, especially seeing the St. Louis Rams and the San Diego Chargers and the Baltimore Colts and the Houston Oilers, all those teams left. Green Bay never left because that ownership situation is so weird, so unique. And this is the little Disneyland that the league has somehow managed to keep a national park without effing it up, right?
That's true. I mean, they could have moved to Milwaukee, where they played games for 50 years. And but they changed the stadium around, and Milwaukee's ticket holders still supported the team up here. So yeah, they've the waiting list is I think 120,000 names, and each name can buy 4 seats.
That's a lot of you got a big stadium. They've already expanded it. I don't know how much more they can expand it beyond that. Bob, we're going to stay in touch and be following you on Twitter on game day for you and Charlie and all the work you guys are doing out there at Bob McGinn Football. How many books for you? I know you got books. I want to promote those for anybody in Packer.
Yeah, I wrote a book, the Ultimate Super Bowl book, in 2 editions, 2009 and 2011. Academic treatment of each game, Nestor, hitting it hard, why these games were won.
Well, and I know the one we like the most is Super Bowl 35, and we still won that one. In Super Bowl 47, we still won that one. Bob, take care of yourself. We'll stay in touch, and hope to have a brat and a beer and some curds with you on Sunday morning up there.
I appreciate it, Nestor. Thank you very much.
You got it, Bob McGinn. He's been covering the National Football League for 4 decades, 39 years now on the beat, and living in Green Bay. You can't find a more Green Bay guy than Bob McGinn. Go follow him at BobMcGinnFootball.com. You can find me out in the BuyAToyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear. Our morning newspaper ships to your email inbox, brought to you by the aforementioned Planet Fitness, which has kept Bob off the golf course. But take care of yourself out there, work out safe, and make sure you get some training there as well at your Planet Fitness location, planetfitness.com and planetoftriumphs.com to learn more about all the cool stuff they do there, get some inspiration. I'm doing a little extra eggnog and pumpkin spice here during the holidays, so I need a little Planet Fitness myself. Don't forget, Dennis Kolatzos is here this Thursday, next Thursday, every Thursday. It is the SSV on WNST, brought to you, of course, by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. They also provide our WNST tech service for all Danny Woodhead reports and all the deals I'm sure the Orioles are going to be making here in the offseason. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram. I will be streaming live on our Facebook Live as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel from Lambeau over brats, beers, sausages, things, cheese. It'll be fun. A little weekend in Lambeau, a little quick trip in and out. Follow along on our journey out on social media. I am Nestor, much like Mr. Angelos, a very available individual. Nasty at WNST.net reaches me. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 at WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.